So great news.
Nick, another question from AB, who's been rampant in his questions here. He says that he goes racing because my dad did, as did his dad. However, drunken yobs, he suggests, are basically spoiling family trips to the races. And this is an issue that's been raised quite a few times, especially at summer race meetings when the football season is in hibernation.
Yeah.
What can RFC do to try and help with that?
Don't know. It really is a course-by-course issue. I think there are some courses that are worse than others.
Is there a problem though? Is there a widespread problem?
I don't know. I go racing a lot, particularly at the weekends, and I haven't seen it. Maybe I'm just at the wrong tracks and maybe there are others that are bad. But I think on the whole, my feeling is that racecourses are a very, very safe environment and they're very family friendly. But I think racecourses would be anxious, to know where they're particularly letting down the current customer, because obviously you don't want to be going racing and feel intimidated by people who've had too much to drink, and we all like to celebrate, but there is can go too far.
Gordian Troller, he's not interested in drunks on racecourse, he's interested in saddlecloths. He says it was great to see the more visible saddlecloths last week, another RFC initiative. However, he said, why do you not adopt the US system of coloured saddlecloths? That whole saddlecloth idea of having the really big visible ones, is that something now that's going to be rolled out across the board? Yes,
obviously each course has to buy their saddlecloths. We wanted the bigger numbers because I think they show up very well on television. They also, certainly for me, they work very well on the racecourse as well. I'm glad he likes them. I think they have had mostly very positive approval. One or two trainers have said the cloths are slightly too long, and we may be looking at that. There's certainly no reason why we can't do them in different colours, and that could be linked to a sponsor. That again is up to the race courses. What we're really saying is this will be the new size of the numbers, and we can work around that for sponsors or for colours. And I think at certain race meetings or festivals, then the colours are very good, and I think we certainly won't be discouraging that.
And is that a short-term thing now, and will that happen quite quickly?
I think the bigger numbers will come in gradually as race courses replace their number cloths, so it won't happen overnight. But certainly talking to John Gosden about it, he thought that the new material is lighter and therefore there's no extra weight that the horse carries. And overall, just a few tweaks and they'll gradually come in everywhere.
That was one of the things that RFC did last week to try and explain the sport, maybe to help the newcomers to sport understand what was going on. I was at Ascot where they did really well in having lots of CCTV coverage and parade ring coverage explaining how racing works. But even so, at Wolverhampton on the Monday, we had announcements about, the H14 announcements in a bizarre language and requesting that Mr. D.C. Jones appear before the stewards. That needs to change, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've started to try and tweak some of the language. I find, Rule 4 applies as a bit of a daft one because it makes you wonder what happened to Rules 1, 2 and 3. But it's a slow process to change that language. I think this sort of feedback is really helpful. We need to go a bit further. There are some expressions that if we've been going racing a long time we really like, but equally for the first-time race goer, they can be pretty impenetrable.
Madgewick asks, what happened to Brian and Ben? What did happen to Brian and Ben?
I don't know. Brian and Ben, I think, had died before I arrived, and that was last August. I think
nothing to do with you.
No. I think they'd been airbrushed out, so they don't exist any longer. I think they were just a short-term way of explaining two different types of customer, and unfortunately, that didn't really work. So they won't be back. You won't see them again.
They've gone. Those two different types of customer, though, the Brians and the Bens. One theme that's been raised by a number of people when RFC have been raising issues, is that in this desire, this worthy desire to broaden the appeal of racing, some people think there are things that could be done and would be done that, while broadening the appeal of racing to new people, could alienate the existing bedrock support that racing has. There are things that beyond your remit, things like extending or reducing the scope of the seasons, the length of the seasons, of premierisation. Although they're not specifically your areas, is there a danger that we can, by trying to chase new racegoers that sometimes may not be there, we lose the ones we already have?
No, I think we're very conscious of the fact that we want to keep what's magic about the sport. So I think although people are fearful that we're going to suddenly do something wildly different, we're not. We're trying to just make it, keep all the strengths, the assets we've got, but just make some of the things just a little bit easier, a little bit more modern to understand for not just younger racegoers, but also people who are coming in new to the sport at every age. And But one thing I think anybody who's a keen racegoer will tell you is they usually got into the sport when they were a teenager or a young man or woman, and we know that it's a sport that grabs you quite early in life, and that's why it's pretty important that we really get connected to the younger adults who will ultimately become our lifelong fans.
And final question, Nick, from John H. Hart, who asks, what can we expect next from Racing for Change?
Well, I can't tell you first here.
Go on.
No. At the moment, we're really focusing on the Derby and Royal Ascot, the summer festivals. That's very much what we're doing this week. Right. And in particular, trying to place, this is sort of the PR speak, but trying to place major features in national newspapers, trying to get people onto chat shows and the like. So that's really trying to talk about the Derby and Ascot. We are looking at some sort of fun initiatives during the summer, which will again appeal to maybe a broader base of racegoers. Right. But we also need to do small things that will just improve the sport for everybody. Last week we were trialling showing the photo finish print at the same moment as the judge announces the photo, and when I saw it at Sandown, it didn't seem to quite still work in the way that it should do to create the drama. Yeah. Anybody who's seen it and been racing this week and seen it, there haven't been that many photo finishes last week, but we'd very be interested in the feedback on that, because we all want to see that photo immediately the judge announces it, but we've just got to do it in a way that works, and believe me, the production that's required to do that is more complicated than one first imagines.
But Nick, summing up where we are now with the project, would you say so far so good?
I think we're starting to make some progress. I think there's a hell of a lot more we've got to do. We've really got to get the sport out there. I think we've had some big wins, some of which have been gifted to us. I think the fact that Tony McCoy won the Grand National was a PR dream, really. He's now much better known by the wider public, and everybody in racing knows him. We were very lucky that the weather was very good during the week of free racing, but now we've got to motor even faster and really get the sport talked about.
Nick, just one last question on that one, because you raised a Tony McCoy issue. One thing that would broaden racing's reach and broaden the racing, maybe not appeal, but the public's consciousness of it, is if Tony McCoy was crowned BBC Sports Personality of the Year. There's talk of maybe racing launching a mass campaign to help win that award. Is that something RFC would be getting behind?
We're certainly going to be looking at it. I think we should be the people who can try and help that. Yeah. I think starting it now would be too early. I think the voting isn't until the autumn.
No, sure.
And a bit like starting the general election, sort of build up too early, can be a bit of a disaster. So no, we would got that very much in our minds to start from when the summer's over and the jump season really starts to get going again. So that's a project that's on the back burner at the moment. But I think this year, if we can't get him on the shortlist, I'll be very disappointed.
Nick Attenborough, thanks very much.